Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of The Square Show, where we help professional Squarespace users stay up to date with the latest trends and tools to enhance their businesses. I'm your host, Sarah, and joining me today is my co-host, John.
Hey everyone, glad to be here. Today we're going to talk about an exciting technology that's been making waves in the world of content creation, AI chat generation.
That's right, John. AI chat generation uses sophisticated algorithms to generate human-like responses to text prompts, allowing businesses to automate their customer service and marketing efforts.
It's a game changer for businesses, especially for those that rely heavily on online interactions with their customers.
Absolutely. And for our Squarespace users, this technology is especially relevant, as many of them use the platform to showcase their products and services.
With AI chat generation, businesses can create personalized conversations with their customers, answer common questions, and even offer product recommendations.
It's a great way to enhance the customer experience and increase engagement on their Squarespace site. Plus, it frees up time for business owners to focus on other important tasks.
So if you're ready to take your online business to the next level and have a little fun with some robots along the way, give AI chat generation a try. How did that sound to you?
I guess your name is John now.
If you haven't figured it out already, everyone, that intro was written by an AI chat generator. The conversation around AI has ignited these last few months, especially chatbots that can generate text-based conversations that feel almost human. To talk about it, we are going to bring on two human voices today to Circle Live, an AI expert from our Squarespace staff, and a copywriter whose brand focuses on writing copy to sound more human. I'm really excited about this conversation, and we're going to try and have an especially long Q&A because I know you all have some questions for Sarah and Ross. There's so much to know about AI and so much to learn. So right now in the chat, share something you've learned about AI in the past few months, and I'm going to turn it over to McKenna to play a short message from today's sponsor.
Hey Circle, I'm Gabe Williams, the product manager of our campaigns team. So there's a lot of ways to market to potential customers, but email marketing is still one of the most effective ways to build an audience, nurture your most promising leads, and build long-lasting relationships with your customers. Email campaigns is built right into the Squarespace platform with beautiful templates, powerful branding tools, and automations right out of the box. If you've developed your brand voice, start talking to your customers with Squarespace email campaigns. To see how to set yours up, I'll be giving a live demo next week just for Circle members. The link to the sign up is available in the chat.
McKenna, if you could share the link to the demo in the chat, we're gonna have a lot of fun with that next week. Sarah, what else are we seeing in the chat as far as people thinking and talking about AI?
Yeah, I'm just seeing one response from Wayne so far who says that they've learned a lot about writing prompts, but I want to know, what has everyone else learned about AI? Maybe something that intrigues you or scares you. Go ahead and put that in the chat so we can get this discussion going. Oh, Darlene has learned about art. It's been so cool to see what AI has been creating with art, right? I'm seeing that it's a hard sell with my clients, generating images for ad campaigns, seeing a lot of cool tools that are popping up. So much, Henry says, so much potential. So true. And I think we'll be diving into a lot of that today.
Definitely. Before we dive into this meaty conversation, though, we wanted to start off by stating that the opinions expressed in this upcoming conversation are those of the individual speaking and are not representative of Squarespace as a company. If you have any questions about this, please reach out to me directly on the forum. Happy to talk about it. But to start, let's bring on our first guest for today. Ross Messing is a team manager in machine learning at Squarespace and also happens to have a PhD in computer science. Dr. Ross Messing, welcome to Circle Live.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we're so glad that you're here. And joining the conversation next is our other guest. Sara Noel has practical experience as a copywriter, marketing mentor, and founder of Between the Lines Copy. You may have also seen her at Circle Live last year. Sara, thanks for joining us on Circle Live.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to go ahead and dive into our conversation today. It looks like the chat is still going. Please keep telling us what you're thinking as the conversation goes on. Really excited for this to be a community conversation. So Ross, if we can start with you, there's a lot of talk out there about AI being used to help with copywriting and writing content. What can we expect from AI copywriters out there right now?
I mean, my best guess is that they do a reasonable job of generating sort of generic language. So, if you want something that really sounds a lot like the language that's represented in the training data, which is sort of a giant integral over huge amounts of language data, the sort of thing where you'd say, hey, write me, a description of X. And you'd be okay with pretty much anything that someone came back with, then, I think that you could get a lot out of, these new generative models for copywriting. If you wanted something a little more structured or with more of a coherent sort of voice, I'd be a little more standoffish with it.
Totally. That definitely makes sense. And Sarah, with your practical experience of AI, what do you think that we can expect from AI copywriters at this point? Oh, I think we have you on mute. If you want to just...
It would help if I unmuted myself. I was too excited to answer your question. So
Oh, yeah.
I struggle to even call them AI copywriters, right? Because these robots aren't copywriters. They're just taking the information that they have, like Ross said, from this database that they're accessing for information, and they're giving you an answer, but they're not giving you like a skilled, strategic, expert level piece of copy written by somebody who would rival them in terms of like an actual copywriter. They're just a little robot.
Totally.
Not to be rude, but
you're totally fine. Ross, is there a way at this point to tell the difference between copy that's written by AI and copy that's written by a human?
From a technology side, if I wanted to design a machine learning classifier that was going to take in a writing sample and say, yes, this was written by a generative AI model, or no, this was written by a human, no, there is not a sort of automatic, scalable way to design a piece of machinery that does that reliably.
And Sarah, what do you think? Is there a way to tell?
I think there's definitely a way to tell, because the level of personality that you have there is going to be different. Like, you're going to be able to tell if I were to type into an AI tool right now, blog post about 5 reasons you need a website. If I write a blog post about the 5 reasons you need a website, you will in 1 second be able to tell which one the robot wrote versus which one I wrote, even if I train them, like, use this particular brand voice, or this is the type of content, to look at to create this thing. I'm going to be able to add personality, and a robot is not going to be able to do that.
So actually, great segue into what I wanted to talk about next, Sarah. If we could focus on the human side of copywriting. Sarah, you gave an excellent talk at Circle Day last year called Write Copy That Actually Sounds Human. And I want to actually just share a clip from that presentation so that people can get a taste for it. I'm going to share that clip right now.
Sometimes I'll get on my Instagram story and I'll have my rat's nest bun still from like 2 days ago. I'm like really not looking good. I'm talking about how I left my sunglasses in the cab yesterday, complaining. My dad will message me and say, you're going to lose all your clients. Like, nobody's going to work with you anymore. How are you going to pay for Wesley's daycare? Like, oh my God, nervous, right? That I'm going to get canceled. My whole business is going to go up in flames because I went on Instagram without brushing my hair. I'm getting more clients because I didn't brush my hair. That's a true fact. People have inquired and said, I really liked your authenticity on Instagram and I'm hiring you because you didn't brush your hair. So it's not true that you need to be this like perfect, strict professional person all the time. People want real people. They want real conversations. So don't be afraid to give them what they want.
Real conversations and giving people what they want. That was something that really connected with me. And of course, if McKenna, if you could share the link to the full presentation in the chat, I think it's definitely worthwhile watching the entire thing. So many great ideas that Sarah, you give away. But showing up on Instagram with a messy hair is not something that AI can provide, at least not yet. But to start with, I'm curious, how have you been experimenting with AI to give people what they want in the end?
Okay, first of all, thank you for the clip. I've been wanting a clip of this presentation for a year, so I'm very happy to see that. And I just recently sent a newsletter talking about how my dad is stressed that I'm going to lose all my jobs, all of my clients, all of my leads because I show up on Instagram like with my hair looking like this. I was on Instagram Live immediately before this lovely webinar telling the people like, look, I showered. Like I actually did that today, guys. So anyway, I just had to put that out there. I'm a clean person. Okay. It's fine. However, AI can't do that. Like you said, AI can't tell you things about their own personality. They don't have any, they're robots. But I do think AI is a great tool to help copywriters do more of what they're good at doing. So let's take that example of the blog post I was talking about before. If I wanted to write a blog post, 5 reasons why you need a website. Maybe I'm having writer's block. Maybe I'm stuck. Maybe I need help figuring out what 5 reasons are that I might need a website. So I might type into an AI tool, blog post about 5 reasons you need a website. And then maybe they would come up with, these lovely robots would come up with something that I didn't think of before, or they would bring up a different perspective about a point and I would think, oh, great, let me include that. Or they would say something that I disagree with. Maybe they give a point that I want to say, to my audience, oh, actually, a lot of people think that one of the reasons you need a website is this, and I'm going to use AI's perspective there, but instead you actually need it because XYZ. So it's a great research tool, but I wouldn't use it for anything more than research. Like I would never give a client something completely written by AI, but I for sure have used it for that research element of it. And one other thing that I want to mention as well, I'm able to verify the accuracy of that. That's something I saw somebody bring up in the chat, and I know we were planning on talking about that at some point as well. But because I am a website copywriter, I'm able to see, okay, 5 reasons you need a website. I know the answer to that. If I were to type in, how to build a rocket ship, I'm going to crash on my way to the moon. I cannot verify if this formula is correct. I'm not a rocket scientist. So that's something that I think people need to be mindful of when using it as a research tool, because you have to know the appropriate things to type in to get the information that you want. So you can't really verify the accuracy of its research unless you're already an expert on the subject.
Yeah, please go ahead. I was actually going to ask you, Dr. Rasmussen, if there's what using AI as a research tool, what the research says about using AI as a research tool, and if you could advise a little bit on that as well.
Well, so these new technologies, these generative language models, are relatively recent. I think, I haven't looked at, you'd have to look at a lot of the quantitative social science to see about, where, they're being used now. And if I'm not sure there is a huge amount of, I'm sure there's a lot of research going on. I'm not sure how much research has been published on it. I think I wanted to put an asterisk on something that Sara said a few times, which is right, but with a but. So the idea that these things don't have personalities, they're robots, is certainly accurate. They are literally a mathematical machine that predicts the next word. And that's, not a personality. But at the same time, you can imagine, Sara presumably has a giant body of writing that's written with one or a small related family of voices that Sara, you've used. I imagine that if you take your entire body of writing and you feed it to one of these things and say, effectively, write like this, it will not be a replacement for you, but it'll sound a lot more like you than if you didn't do that. So the idea that there's no way to sort of modify a voice is false, but the idea that there's something that these language models cannot yet capture about human expression would seem to be a relatively easy position to defend. Sam, I got lost. What was the question you asked?
No, that was great. That was great. Actually, Sara, I'd love to hear your response to that about AI using your voice and learning about your voice.
I have a great response to that. self-proclaimed great response that I just thought of when Ross was talking. So as a copywriter, if the question is, are AI tools replacing copywriters, right? So he's saying Sarah has this body of work. Yeah, I do. For my blog, my newsletter, you could see millions of words that I've written in my brand voice, but I write for other people. People hire me to write copy for them. There's no body of work that they wrote. They don't like writing about themselves. They're hiring me to do that for them. And I'm writing their website. That's one element of something I'm writing for them. Maybe I'm helping them develop 20 sales emails for one course that they're launching, or maybe I helped them develop one sales page for one thing they're writing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not writing a body of work, or I don't have a body of work to start with. I'm the one creating that person's brand voice, their messaging, their copy. So there's no starting point that AI could take and learn to create a client project. So maybe AI could replace something that I did, because they could take all of the content over at betweenthelines.copy.com. Like I said, there's millions of words over there. I do have a 60-page website because I'm insane. But for my clients, there's nothing to go off of, because that's why they're hiring me. They need help figuring out what to say and how to write it.
That makes a lot of sense. I guess for me, I think of these things not as replacements for humans.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
as like, tools, right? Like, I guess what I wonder is, in a future where these technologies are a little bit more developed, where the quality of the output was better, where we had some understanding, which we don't really yet, about what it means for them to offer a coherent voice. In that future, how much more could you produce? How much more capable would you be, just in terms of the amount of output you could produce, or the quality of the output you could produce, than you are now? That's, I guess, to me, the question that these technologies really opens up, in terms of copywriting.
Yeah, I think that in terms of volume, it's still the research thing for me, right? That's still my answer. I still feel like no matter how qualified they get, if there's some sort of copywriter course for robots that they all take and they all become really good at writing words that sell things, I still feel like copywriters, like I've said before, they can't ask my client a follow-up question. Like, they wouldn't know which correct follow-up question to ask. Everyone has different goals, so there's not like, this is the formula for website copy. Like, sure, you could take my website copy course and I'm going to tell you, okay, this is what to put on your website, but what your headline is and what Sarah's headline is and McKenna's headline is and Sam's headline is all different. You all have different goals. There's all a different purpose. Everyone has a different, plan. If you looked at my website compared to a bunch of other copywriters' websites, they're probably not saying they're a hoe for italics, but I am. They probably don't swear on their website, but I do. And how would a robot know? Like, obviously, like I said, and like you said too, they could look at evidence, and they could get good at it. But the personality piece, no matter how advanced they get, I'm not sure they would be able to take the goals into consideration of each person's website and then use like strategic website copywriting formulas to be able to do what you need them to do. And specifically, I'm talking about website copy. Obviously, if you're writing like a little old blog, how much do you care, right? If you're just hoping to put some content out there and you don't care about the result of it, some people really just want to rank on Google, and maybe they did their keyword research and they say, okay, cool, I know I need a blog post about why website copy converts, and they don't care about their brand voice. Me, that would never fly. If people who are subscribed to my newsletter follow me online 1 second, they would be like, Sarah didn't write that. So because I'm so connected as a person to my brand, it depends on your goals. It's my go-to answer for everything. Anyone who's a student of mine knows I always say that, and I know it's annoying, but some people care more than other people. Like, I care that my reputation and my brand are tied together. Some people just want to put out content. So it depends on your goals.
Yeah, and
certainly if you're trying to generate something that's going to be ranked highly by an artificial ranker, which is fundamentally what a search engine is. Yeah, it's not clear to it seems very clear to me that a machine would likely get pretty good at it.
And it also seems like one of the things that is going to be really hard for AI to replace is what Sarah is saying, the client relationship. That piece of it where you're a person on a call who's responding in real time in real ways. That is something that maybe there's a world where you bring AI text generators into that conversation to collaborate on some text, but there's still going to be, it sounds like, a regular client call and regular conversations about what people want. There's still an iterative process through that. So that seems to be, to me, one of the hardest things to replace for AI.
I guess I think there's ways in which that's very true and ways in which that's a lot less true than I would have said a year or two ago. By which I mean, in the recent past, we used to have something called the Turing test that was, hey, can an artificial thing convince us that we're talking to something human-like? If it can, we're going to call that intelligent. And I feel like anyone who's interacted with ChatGPT, realizes that to one degree or another, that test is no longer, sufficient. And I feel like the difference between where we are and the future is not, well, ChatGPT can't synthesize audio yet, and therefore, come on, if you've seen the things that these generative AI models can synthesize. They can synthesize audio. There's no reason to believe that in a couple of iterations you won't be able to have a convincingly conversation-like conversation with these things. But that doesn't mean that it's the same as a conversation with a human. That there's something that we don't really know how to model, what it is to be human yet. And we're getting better at sort of synthesizing aspects or dimensions of it than we were before at a pace that's frankly shocking to me. But I don't think anyone who builds these things would claim, unless they had a strong vested self-interest in making that claim, that these are replacements for humans in the sense that, like, oh yeah, you don't need to interact with humans no more, even though you're a human and therefore a social, entity. You can just interact with the machines. Anyone who's telling you that and is also selling you the machines.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the question though. I think it's more of, should I hire this person to, and from my perspective, if we're talking about copywriters and AI, I think it's not like, should I just stop interacting with humans at all? I think it's more, should I spend thousands of dollars, 4-figure price tag to invest in website copy, or could an AI tool just do that for me? I think copywriters, at least the ones that I have spoken to, have been wondering, am I going to be out of a job soon? Because are people going to prefer or are going to value these AI tools over working with someone like me? So I think that it's important to continue to communicate your value the same way that you would anyway if you're a copywriter and you're nervous. But I don't think that an AI tool would ever be able to produce the same result as interacting with a human would. But I don't think the question is like whether or not we're gonna, if they're able to interact like a human. I don't think anybody, I can't speak for anybody else, but I wouldn't assume that. I would just assume people are going to question the value of a copywriter and whether or not they need a copywriter. And you still do, by the way, is the answer to that question.
I guess I wonder, there must be people out there who have needs for things like copywriters, but who just don't have the budget for whatever reason to hire one. Surely a technology like this, is at least arguably better than just literally not having any options.
Yeah,
I think we're in a really interesting place right now with this conversation, as well as the technology, but mostly this conversation. I do want to move on to some other questions that we have. Really, really exciting to hear this stuff that you're talking about that's on the horizon. It's making me feel a little more grounded, but also leaving a lot of curiosities. I'm sure that there are plenty of other questions that folks in our audience have. So I want to move on to our Q&A in a second, take some audience questions. Audience, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. That's at the bottom of your Zoom screen. It's just two little bubbles that say Q&A on them. That is the best place to put them for us to answer those questions. A lot of great stuff happening in the chat. Continue to chat with each other in the chat. We're going to move on to Q&A in a second, bringing back Ross and Sarah to continue this conversation. But first, I'm going to bring back McKenna, our PA, to share our second sponsor for today's program. McKenna, take it away, please.
If your Squarespace workflow could use an efficiency boost, consider upgrading to the Enterprise plan. It's designed to help you better manage multiple websites and save time collaborating on content with your team members and clients. The Enterprise plan comes with exclusive features like page drafts, role permissions controls, and security options. It also lets you pay in bulk, so no more updating credit card info individually across websites. You can schedule a consultation with a Squarespace expert to see if it's right for you. Just click the link in our chat to get started.
Thank you so much. Back to me after I unmute myself. Enterprise, great way to boost your business. Another wonderful sponsored message for Circle Live. Sarah Griesdorf, my co-host, really quick. There's a lot of things that have been covered right now, and I want to see if just the two of us really quick could just give one takeaway that we have so far that'll kind of propel us into the Q&A. Sarah, what's a takeaway that you've gotten so far?
Yeah, well, John, just kidding, Sam. I think one of the biggest takeaways for me was Sarah's point just about the like personality that kind of gets added when a human is doing the copywriting. I, as a community manager, have kind of been hearing similar things in our space, right? It's like the empathy that you can lead with is the value that we have like over AI, and it's cool to see that kind of reflected in copywriting as well as community.
My takeaway that I'm going to share is very much a question, that last question that I think we left on the table, which I'm going to paraphrase, which is just, how much can AI copywriters replace of copywriters, and how can copywriters prepare themselves? I want to agree with Sara Noel that people still need copywriters, but I'm also taking from this what Ross is saying, that the function of a copywriter might change, and I think that this is like a fertile ground for discussion. But to maybe get us there and start maybe asking more questions, I really want to give a chance to look at some of the questions that we have in the Q&A. So as I said, if you have questions, audience, place them in the Q&A box. Sarah, what kind of questions are we getting right now?
Yeah. All right. So go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A box. And yeah, just to respect the time of our hosts, if you can keep all questions kind of focused on the conversation that we have at hand, that would be great. All right, let's see what we got. So I feel like some of these are going to be like really like over my personal head. Okay. Kendall says, if an AI bot writes copy for a digital platform that is gatekeepered by bots, then doesn't that mean the two are self-fulfilling, but it's humans still making purchase decisions? So isn't that the ultimate measure? Does anyone have thoughts on that?
No. I guess if you think about, using automated technologies to generate things that are then gatekept by other automated technologies is not new. That's sort of the history of spam on the internet, right? In effect, and certainly search engine spam, and things that are trying to get ranked up by not only automated generated, but a lot of automatic generated content gets ranked pretty highly. Whenever you search for something, one of the first 5 hits is something that's basically relatively automatically generated. So because these automated processes are different, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's all convergent, but or that it's what was the term Kendall used, self-fulfilling. But what it does mean is that humans are sort of outside of that loop. Although, as Kendall rightly points out, humans sort of make the purchase decision or the click decision or whatever. So they're still sort of part of the function. But I mean, I think, yeah, we're heading, we're already in a place, and we were last year and the year before, in a place where a lot of the things that happen with content on the internet happens with the interaction of multiple pieces of software. And I suspect we're getting, we're going to be more there next year.
Cool. That's a good kind of segue to this next question that says, I think AI has moved a lot faster than anyone had anticipated in the last year or so. What do you both see as the short-term and medium-term applications for those working in the web, or I would say implications as well?
Ross, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think you got to look at the stuff that it's good at and think about the stuff that it's going to be good at. Right now, it's pretty reasonable at generating language. Now, what that's showing us is the difference between what we might classically consider writing and generating language. And, I mean, I think you said, what are the short-term and medium-term applications? So short-term applications, yeah, I mean, people are already using these things as sort of personal assistants, given a block of, I talk a lot, you can tell. So I might say, take a paragraph and pass it to one of these things and say, summarize this into 3 bullet points so people don't fall asleep while I'm talking, or someone might do the opposite and sort of, fill something out. If you imagine a stereotyped, student who's got a paragraph worth of content, but wants to hit, 1,000 words, this is probably better than playing with margins and double spacing. But, in terms of real commercial applications, I think we're going to see more and more higher quality automatically generated text. And that's, as I'm sure Sarah will point out, not the same thing as real human generated text, but it's going to be harder and harder for the search engines, the content curators, the rankers to tell the difference automatically. And what that's likely to lead to, if I had to guess, is a lot more noise. I think the noise generators who spend time writing programs to grab our attention in order to sell us ads, in effect, are going to, they're going to be the immediate beneficiaries of this technology. And I'm sure they're already using it for that. What I wonder is sort of what's the next step after that. That's where I think things get exciting. When a high school student who doesn't have a lot of time can suddenly generate, content in a way that it used to take a team of 10 people a week to generate, you're going to see much higher quality stuff. Think about the memes of today are much higher quality than what you could generate if you spent way too much time working on it 10 years ago. Think about that squared.
Totally. Sarah?
Sorry, I'm laughing because I accidentally just called David in the chat rabbit and it made me laugh. Anyway, I was trying to compliment something that he said, but I called him a mean name with autocorrect. This is the problem with technology. No, I'm just kidding. So in terms of short term, medium term, my thoughts about that already. Short term, we're using it for research. Medium term, long term, there are people in the chat saying you haven't thought about 3 years down the line, it is going to steal your job by then. Okay, cool. I'll worry about that in 3 years. What we haven't said yet is that some people, okay, there's 2 camps of people, maybe some of you fall in the middle, who don't want to talk to robots. Think about when you're having a tech problem. If you're having this tech problem, do you want to talk to a robot? No, you're frustrated. You're like, you charged me too much for this thing. I want to talk to a human. Maybe you're not going to be a Karen about it, but you probably want to talk to a person. We as humans want the connection. So there will be people that want to use these AI tools and think it's perfectly fine, sufficient, whatever, that's great. But there's going to be people that want to connect with a human, that want to speak to a human, that want to work with a human, no matter what the AI tools can produce. And then in terms of the actual content it's producing. So let's say short term, I feel it, research, medium term, long term. Let's say these AI tools get so good at writing copy, you won't be able to tell the difference between theirs and mine. Where's the unique perspective though? Because that's what people want from a copywriter, from any sort of content creator, anybody who's going to write something interesting, engaging, worth reading. You want the unique perspective. You want, of course, the personality, but Ross is saying maybe they can learn that personality. But what about your opinions? What about people with capital O opinions? I don't know about y'all, but I have some big opinions and I like to share them. So if we're thinking about it that way, I feel like that's a piece that often gets missed in this conversation is where's the uniqueness in that? Like, are they able to form opinions? I don't know, maybe down the line they're going to be able, but if I'm thinking about, ranking on Google, we won't get into the SEO conversation. That's a whole topic for another day. But if I'm thinking about the blog post that I personally rank number 1 or position 0, that little featured snippet that comes up for, all of those posts, there's me storytelling. I'm telling the story of the time that this happened. I'm telling the story of the time that I did this. I'm telling some background information. It's not just about like the optimization of the specific keyword. Google's so smart now that they see, oh, this girl's offering a different perspective. Let's push her up in these rankings. And I have, the proof in terms of the rankings and the specific posts that I've written, that show up first. So even Google wants the unique perspective. But so I think that's something that's maybe missing. I'm not saying it couldn't potentially be added for people, flame me in the chat saying she's not thinking about 3 years from now. But what about perspective? What about opinions? That's my thoughts.
I love
I
that.
have
I think that that's great. I just want to support that I think that there's that, the thing that a robot doesn't have is a story, and they can make up a story, but a full lived experience, I think we are I would assume that we're a long ways away from having a full robot that can experience something and relate it back. But what were your thoughts, Ross?
Well, one sort of, turning the crank on what Sarah was talking about and sort of thinking about the extensions, one thing that makes me nervous is if we actually do end up leaning really hard into a future that's just totally based on generated content. And it makes me nervous, not like in the sort of, what does society mean? And, I don't want to, from a strictly
Getting
from training
existential.
that, yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of people doing that and a lot of money in it, which is, don't get me started. But just from like training, the next version of the model, one of the things one of the things I've seen throughout my career is people sort of training machine learning models on the wrong data. And I don't want to get into all of that because it's, not a great conversation for this audience, but training on stuff that you produce ends up in sort of a potentially problematic infinite cycle. There's ways to do it, but they require a tremendous amount of balance that's very, very difficult to. I honestly worry about, GPT-5 if, it's trained in a world where a tremendous amount of its training data was generated by GPT-4, for example. Just, there's a diversity to the data that's tremendously important for training these models. That's also tremendously important for other things. I think we all value the diversity of the internet to varying degrees. That, when you have a single underlying thing or a small set of underlying mechanisms generating a lot of stuff, you can end up radically reducing the underlying diversity of what's out there without even realizing it. Like, I don't know what an internet written by, a generative model looks like. But when I think about grabbing my training data, I do worry that there are hidden structures that I'm leaning on that are not going to be there in that world. And how will I even know that? That's, I don't know, it sounds existential, but bizarre, but it keeps me up.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, do we have time for one more?
I think we have time for one more question. Do we have a really good one?
Well, I'm seeing a couple questions about the concept of copyright. And I'm curious, we have a question from Karen that says, with AI, do you think there'll be a chance that 2 or more people end up getting the same result and therefore create a copyright issue? Head shake.
The answer is not no.
I would say yes.
But what happens now? Like, is it possible that if you take 100,000 copywriters and you all ask them to produce the same 6-word slogan for the same product, that, you could end up with 2 of them generating the same thing in this hypothetical thought experiment that, yes, is completely impractical? What would happen then? Or is that too abstracted?
I feel like that's just proving my point of why you need to add your own little flair. Because if I type in blog post about 10 reasons to work with a personal chef. I don't know why, that's just what popped into my brain. Isn't it going to tell us the same answers? So then if I add my own personality to that blog post, I now have something completely different than what Karen has.
Yeah. I will say that there are ways to generate responses based on fixed trained models that make it statistically improbable that you'll generate exactly the same response, and that for obvious reasons, most of the commercial systems right now use that. But you know, that's not the only way to generate stuff. You can pick the single best prediction that the model has for each next token, and that is, you know, fundamentally deterministic. And some products will probably end up using that. So I suspect we will find out exactly what that means in terms of copyright law at some point.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our Q&A portion. Sarah and Ross, if people want to contact you or follow you or get more information about your work, how and where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at BTL not BLT. I am not a sandwich, despite what a lot of people think. So BTL Copy on Instagram, and my website is betweenthelines.copy.com. You can Google Between the Lines Copywriting. I'll come up. Google website copywriter near me. If you're in Boston, I'll come up. But I would love for you to subscribe to my newsletter. I talk about things like this all the time. I send one marketing tip once a week on Tuesday mornings. And you can subscribe at betweenthelines.copy.com/subscribe. But if you just go to my website, there will be opt-ins all over the place because I'm a copy queen. And that's it.
I feel like the way you talk is a testament to your ability to write.
Thank you so much.
Ross, where can we find you?
Oh, I tend to fly below the radar. I don't know.
Can't
I guess
find
reach
him
out to
anywhere.
Sam.
Get a
He knows how
Squarespace
to Slack
website.
me.
Yeah.
I think we put your LinkedIn in the chat already anyway.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Sure. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I guess. But,
He's like, actually, don't.
If you
well,
want to see that Ross is a real person, you can find his LinkedIn.
He
but
said he likes to talk.
I do like to talk. It is true.
Well, we would, Sarah and Ross, we would love to have you both talking to us all day, but we do have a time limit on this little chat that we usually have. So thank you both so much. This has been delightful hearing from both of you. Before we go, I want to mention that we've officially launched registrations for Circle Day, the professional conference for professional Squarespace designers, not robot designers. And as Circle members, you are welcome to join us for a limited number of spots in person in New York City. But for everyone, not just Circle members, you can join us online for networking, workshops, all the fun stuff that you remember from last year. Just go to circleday.squarespace.com. That is where you're going to get a registration on.
awesome.
It was so fun in person last year, guys. I can verify. Real person telling you can trust.
Oh my gosh, a testimonial. Thank you, Sarah.
I got you.
Yeah, it was such a blast last year. We are at the end of our time here together today, but we are just getting started with our Circle Live after party. So we are going to use a separate Zoom link for this month's after party. And McKenna is going to go ahead and share that in the chat right now. So follow that link and your current Zoom window will close and then reopen with a new Zoom window, and we will see you there momentarily.
And if you like, you can also stay on this Zoom after we leave, and McKenna will help you get set up in the live chat here to join the after party. So until next Circle Live, this is Sam Z.
And I'm Sarah Z.
Thanking you all for custom coding us into your day.
Bye, everybody. See you at the after party.